Welcome in to the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe. I'm Ross Geiger, the former NBA video coordinator, and I'm joined alongside Bruce Bernstein, our four-time Emmy Award winner who spent more than 3 decades at ESPN producing NBA shows, SportsCenter, and soaking up knowledge from the best hoop analysts in the business. Also joining us is the 2-time Emmy Award winner, Michael Worldby Freer, who's a senior writer at Stat Factor, specializing in writing advanced statistical NBA reports for various announcers across the league. This is episode number 167, the Wilt Chamberlain episode, as Wilt scored exactly 67 points, not once, but 10 times in a single game throughout the course of his NBA career. So kudos to you, Wilt, because I don't think that one's ever going to be topped. That was pretty impressive company, to say the least. 67 points, 10 times. Amazing.
And you know what? His Philadelphia 76ers won the NBA championship in the 1966-67 season.
Wow, look at you on the fly, Bruce. Never disappoint. That is awesome stuff there as a quick tidbit off the dome. All right, moving forward here, let's talk about 4 notable restricted free agents that remain in limbo with the respective teams that they're on. And, I mean, if time just keeps moving on, these guys might just become unrestricted free agents on the open market next year. As each day passes, it's looking more and more that way. So just a few guys that we want to take a look at. And let's start out by discussing probably the top one, in my opinion, and that is Jonathan Kuminga of the Golden State Warriors. He remains unsigned. Doesn't seem like there's that much interest around the league or even the capable interest given salary cap concerns here. Bruce, what's your thoughts on Kuminga? Is this a guy that's going to awkwardly have to walk back to Golden State and be a part of the team next year?
Well, you know, the Dubs have explored some sign and trade deals for him, but there really haven't been any takers. So he could take the qualifying offer from the Warriors, which would pay him well below his market value for a year. But, you know, as you said, then he'd be an unrestricted free agent the following season. Maybe cash in big, sign anywhere he wants for bigger bucks if he does well this season. And if he takes that qualifying offer for $8 million, his trade value for the Warriors is basically zero since they wouldn't control his rights moving forward. So if they can sign him for, let's say, 2 years or more, he can then be a trade piece moving forward if they don't feel they have a future with him. But he would then, of course, cost them more than the $8 million qualifying offer for next year. So it feels like he's headed back to the Warriors, but you just never know.
Yeah. Worldby, what's your take on Kuminga? And do you think Kuminga is a guy that could be a number 1 or maybe even 2 option for another team?
Oh, not even for another team. Down the road, he could be there for the Warriors with their age. Their key players are all in their mid-30s and going up. So it's a really interesting situation from the Warriors' perspective, what to do. He's been in and out of Steve Kerr's doghouse for years now. 15 points a game, but he didn't even average 25 minutes a game last season. It's really, really ridiculous sometimes when you think of how good some of his numbers are with such little playing time. But the Warriors, you know, they're built for now. We know that because of all their key players. But if they let Kuminga go, where is their future? Are they just going to totally bottom out? Or are they going to if they think Kuminga is that guy to kind of bridge or you take a little step, you got to take a step back, but not too big of a step with a guy like Kuminga. I think he has potential to be a 20-point per game guy, a number 1 option on a lot of teams, and including the Warriors in a few years. It's not going to happen, obviously, this year or next year. But the whole restricted free agent thing for these guys is a big gamble, maybe no bigger for the Warriors than the Kuminga situation.
Yeah, got to keep an eye on Jonathan Kuminga. I'm starting to get a little nervous that the Warriors aren't that head over heels about even bringing him back, though. It kind of smells like a Jeremy Grant or even an Aaron Gordon in Orlando situation where these guys just don't think he's cut out to be the guy. Worldby, did you have another thought on that?
No, I think it's there doesn't seem to be any enthusiasm on the Warriors' part to bring him. On the other hand, I don't know from their end what the rush is. They're not going to lose him. He either accepts a qualifying offer or they work something out to their benefit. As Bruce mentioned, in an ideal world, the Warriors would probably love to just sign him to, say, a 2-year deal, maybe a player option for a third or whatever. And as Bruce mentioned, have a tradable piece for next season if they start to look like they can compete for a title. Trade him for something else. Now, if he signs a qualifying offer, you get him below market value. But now, what happens if he has a great season and now he's gone and you get nothing? That's the danger in this from the team perspective.
Totally. Now, Bruce, another guy I want to talk about here tonight is Cam Thomas and the Brooklyn Nets. This is an interesting situation, just given the fact Cam Thomas, he's an absolute bucket. When that guy's out on the floor, he's putting up numbers. But it doesn't seem like Brooklyn really cares about him. In fact, they went out this past draft and drafted 5 guards to kind of semi-replace him. And the only news we've got this summer about Cam Thomas is the beef he got into with Zach Lowe of The Ringer on some of the comments that Zach had about his game. So where do you stand with Cam Thomas, and do you think he'll be back on the next season?
I mean, look, like you said, he's a 6'4" guard. He's a volume shooter. Over the past 2 seasons, he's averaged just under 23 a game. He can be explosive. In his career, he's got 9 games with 40 or more points. He had a career high of 47. So the problem is that he can be a real ball stopper, and he's definitely a minus defender. He is, however, a solid mid-range scorer. So do the Nets want him back? Well, Thomas wants 4 years and around $100 million. The Nets are only offering 2 years for 28. And interest is definitely limited around the league. So he might bet on himself and take that qualifying offer and see if the market improves for him next summer. But nobody's ringing Sean Marks's phone off the hook saying, let's make a deal for Cam.
Yeah, we want a ball stopper. We would love a ball stopper. How many teams are saying that? What are your thoughts on Cam Thomas?
Well, of all the players that we're going to discuss, and personally, I think all 4 are just going to either re-sign the deal to return to their teams or sign the qualifying offer. I think Cam Thomas is the most likely. If I did take odds, who was going to sign the qualifying offer first, it would be Cam Thomas, because, as Bruce mentioned, where's he going to go? There's literally nowhere to go. Nobody's interested in him. Nobody's beating down the door of the Nets to work out a deal. On the flip side, the Nets are going to be pretty bad next year. As you mentioned, Ross, they drafted 5 guards, and if you look at how they did during the summer league, none of those guys really, will just say, stood out at all. So if I'm the Nets and I'm looking at going, all right, I know what Cam Thomas is. He's not going to exactly put us closer to the playoffs, but if we don't have him on our team, where are we going to get points, period? Because it isn't coming from these rookies. And so I expect him to sign the qualifying offer simply because there's nothing out there. He's the most logical guy that would take a gamble on himself and look for that deal next season.
Now, Bruce, if you had to put your feet in his shoes, going back to Brooklyn after not getting what he wanted and being a ball stopper and a bucket getter, Cam Johnson's out of town. He went to Denver this offseason. If you go back into that situation, are you passing to anybody next year, or are you just going to be like, screw it, I'm shooting every time?
Shoot it every time.
You don't want me?
Let it rip. I'm going to get my bag. And the only way to get my bag is to get some buckets.
I like it.
That's exactly right.
All right, World Beam. Well, speaking of buckets, Quentin Grimes made it quite a few buckets for the Philadelphia 76ers last year, but it seems like he and his agent and his camp got a little too overly aggressive with their asking price on the free agent market to retain his services in Philadelphia. Obviously, you were a big Grimes fan when he was with the Knicks. I definitely remember being pretty high on him. But where do you stand here? Do you think he just needs a reality check and to sign that offer? Because it doesn't seem like anyone else is willing to pay him the amount of money he's asking.
It's a weird situation. You really only have a 25 game sample of what he did with Philly when Philly didn't have a whole lot by that time because of injuries and whatnot. So you really want to give Buco bucks to, mega bucks to a guy that has flashes and showed with Philly he could be a big time player. That's another risk for another team. He's another guy. I mentioned. I think all these guys are going to end up with their team again next season. I think they're going to work something out that's going to be a 1 or 2 year deal, work out something favorably where they can, because we talked about when it comes to Philly, it's always about health with every team that's in the question mark. But Philly, as much as anybody, you have Joel Embiid, Paul George. If they get everybody together, big if, I get it. But now you add Maxey. Now you have Grimes in there. Now you have the first round pick from a season ago before he got hurt. Name escapes me. He was going to be rookie. He was going to be the rookie of the year, hands down. Now you have a roster that has a lot of talent, and Quentin Grimes can parlay that, I think, into a larger deal down the road, or at least make Philly sweat it out and pay a little bit more. So I think Philly is going to want to work out some sort of deal. Again, I'm surprised it hasn't happened yet, but he showed enough in those 25 games that he played with Philly that he can be a big-time player. I think teams are just taking a wait-and-see approach on that.
Bruce, your thoughts on Quentin Grimes?
Well, they're kind of negotiating against themselves, if you think about it. I mean, there's no real sense of urgency. If nobody else is really clamoring to get the guy, the market is slow. And he could sign like the other guys that we mentioned, and the one we're about to mention after this. He could sign the qualifying offer for I guess in Philly it's about $8.7 million, and test the market next summer. But look, I mean, there's an opportunity there. Paul George is hurt again. We don't know what his status is going to be at the start of the season. If Grimes is obviously looking for a longer term deal, supposedly looking for around $25 million a year. But as Worldby said, the best play for them, and possibly even for him, is to offer him a shorter term deal, lock him up, then you have him as a trade chip if you need him for that reason. And then, he can eventually test the market as an unrestricted free agent. I mean, look, as World said, he was solid in his games with Philly last season. He averaged almost 22 points, 5 rebounds, 4 assists, good numbers. Granted, most of the games were garbage. None of them really had any bearing on any playoff positioning or anything. But still, as is the case that we talked about a moment ago with Cam Thomas in Brooklyn, you don't know how Embiid's going to be. Maxey, you should be good with. McCain, hopefully you're going to be good with. The kid, VJ Edgecombe, you should be good with. But Grimes can be a bucket for you. He averaged almost 22. So it seems like the right deal. If they're not going to give him 4 years and $100 million, sign him for 2 with the option and, see what happens.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to the fact it's a smaller sample size. I think that was a great point. Will be brought up there. I think it's just not enough to want to throw him a bag, especially when you got a variety of different options at your guard position on Philadelphia. So we'll have to keep an eye on him. He could be a trade piece next season or even at the deadline next year, as well as he's probably going to be a rental for a team looking to compete down the finish line. Now, last but certainly not least, we've got Josh Giddey and the Chicago Bulls. Now, this is an interesting one because they gave up Alex Caruso and really kind of made what seemed to be a lopsided trade in Oklahoma City's favor to acquire Giddey. Yet there's no deal done, but it doesn't, looking into this as we prep for tonight's show, it doesn't seem like there's any concern from the Bulls press that this won't get finalized, an extension of some sort before the start of the season. Bruce, what's your thoughts on Giddey and the Bulls moving forward? Do you think it's going to get done like the report, all signs seem to point to, or could we all be taken off guard, including Giddey, and he could be an unrestricted free agent next year?
Based on his age and his experience and the fact that he finished the season last year really strong for like the last, couple months, he deserves a long-term contract from the Bulls or another team. But from what I understand, a lot of GMs are really kind of looking for flexibility in case they were to lose a player like a Tatum or a Halliburton and have a lost season and they need to pivot. I mean, he was really good down the stretch. And look, last year the Bulls gave Patrick Williams, the 4th overall pick, who's done next to nothing in the NBA, they gave him 5 years and $90 million with a player option. I mean, Giddey's had a better run than Williams, but but maybe the Bulls are going to be a little bit gun shy to offer that kind of money to somebody because maybe they feel they got a little bit burned with the Patrick Williams deal. But if Giddey should receive a longer-term offer somewhere else, Chicago, I would assume, will match it, okay, unless it's crazy money. And if it were going to be crazy money, he would have happened by now, I think. And they do have money available. They do have some good guards on their team. Kobe White's solid, maybe they can live with Kobe and Dosunmu and Trey Jones. But Giddey brings skills and height that those other guys lack. And I feel like if Chicago just kind of says, thanks, but no thanks, that's going to be a big mistake.
Yeah, I totally agree. World B?
This is the one of the four that we discussed that I can't figure out how they haven't been able to work out a deal so far. As Bruce mentioned, I can't imagine the Bulls, after acquiring him and letting Alex Caruso go, and we saw how well that worked out in Oklahoma City, I can't imagine they just want to let him walk. On the other hand, there seems to be a little bit of a debate, like how many years. I think they can probably come to an agreement on a price range. But I think the years, as Bruce mentioned, you don't want to commit long-term to somebody that young or somebody who's got some skills but isn't an elite player yet. He's only 23. He's going to be 23 when the season starts this next, in October. So he's really young. He's coming off, as Bruce mentioned. Here's the list of guys, by the way. Averaged 14, 7, and 7 last season. LeBron, Luka, and Joker, and Josh Giddey. That's it.
Wow.
So that's pretty good company to be in. As Bruce mentioned, we all question his shot, his ability to shoot the perimeter shot. Well, he shot a career high from 3-point range last year, almost 38%. So you could say he scratched that box or checked that box off. So he's done everything you want him to do coming over, and it's a gamble. Now he could sign, like you said, sign that qualifying offer. We saw years ago Ben Gordon did that and took a gamble on himself, and it paid off with a big fat contract when he left the Bulls and went to the Pistons. Didn't work out career-wise, but he got his money. We also saw Nerlens Noel try to do the same thing, and it bottomed out big time, where he ended up barely making them, I think a year, the vet minimum, whatever it was, the following year. So it can work. That's the gamble when you do this. With these guys, I think they'll come to some sort of agreement. I'm surprised that hasn't happened yet. But I think it sounds like the Giddey camp is looking for more long-term than what the Bulls are, in terms of years, and what the Bulls are willing to, give up.
Yeah, and I find this one surprising as well, just given the pace that they played at last year. They really sped things up in Chicago. And Giddey's a really good rebounder and a guy that, of course, he grabs the rebound and he's pushing the pace himself, as he's also a great ball handler. So I think he is a match made in heaven for what they're trying to do offensively there. So hopefully things work out for Bulls fans' sake.
And by the way, you mentioned that was a complete, and we're going to get into Coach Donovan here soon, but that was a complete shift in philosophy from what they've done in the past. They completely changed their offensive philosophy. It didn't really work out as you'd want, but you got to give credit for trying that. I don't think they're going to just abandon that after 1 year. And as you mentioned, Josh Giddey is a big part of that style.
Yeah. Now let's turn our attention to the Bulls head coach. And this is a guy that was recently interviewed by our very own Bruce Bernstein at the Hoop Hall of Fame. And that is Billy Donovan, who just signed a multi-year contract extension with this team. Bruce, since you just talked to the man himself, I'll start off with you on this one. What do you think the next couple of years look like for the Bulls, under his leadership, and any big takeaways that he happened to mention to you about the Bulls?
Well, they've only made the playoffs once in his 5 seasons as Bulls coach. They made the play-in a couple times, but didn't, make it into the playoffs. So, but the organization appreciates the fact that, he's a solid leader. He's got a track record. So they gave him the contract. Now, they've been, Worldby talked about how the Bulls have sort of went from kind of slower pace to a, faster pace, because they've been rebuilding on the fly the last few years. I mean, only Nick Vucevic and Javon Carter will be 30 years or older when the season begins in October. So they've got a young team, young legs. Giddey, we just talked about, finished last year strong. If he does get the offer, the Bulls can match it. But Matas Buzelis had a really good rookie season for those guys. Kobe White, Trey Jones, Dosunmu, they have some depth at the guard spot. And rookie Noah Essenge from France is an 18-year-old 6'9" power forward. He was the 12th overall pick. So there's going to be some growing pains there. But it just feels like Billy does better with a younger team with that he can sort of, mold into his style. And look, the East is really unsettled. So look, I could see maybe the Bulls moving up, but I really don't know that they're going to move up that much. The play-in's probably going to be their ceiling this year unless they get, lightning in a bottle somehow or another. So, but I don't see that being the case forever. I mean, Billy Donovan's a winner. He knows how to win. He knows how to coach. And I think, he's eventually going to get some traction with this team.
World B?
This one, as I mentioned before, I give Coach Donovan credit for at least trying to do something last season, trying to change things up, trying to go with a new philosophy. We saw more up-tempo, more fast breaks, more threes. That was a big change from what they're used to. It didn't mean anything. It didn't turn out to matter in the end. They've lost in the play-in 3 years in a row now. All 3 years they were eliminated by Miami. So maybe if you just figure out a way to avoid that, your world would be better off. He's had players. His first year with back in 2016 with the Thunder was his best year of coaching. Of course, it helps to have KD and Russell Westbrook on your roster and make the conference finals. He hasn't won a playoff series since then, either with the Thunder or with the Bulls. I don't mind this deal. I think I have mixed feelings about Donovan as a coach and whether he can actually lead a team, really how far he can actually lead a team, I guess I should say. I don't mind being proven wrong. I've been wrong more times than I can count. But this is a weird situation for me. On the other hand, what is the future of the Bulls roster as it's made up now? If you go out and get another coach, what are you giving that other coach now? You're basically in a rebuild. So it's maybe if somebody can turn this team into something or keep them competitive, it would be Coach Donovan. I just don't know where, this is on the front office. What is their plan going forward? We don't even know now with the Josh Giddey situation. What is their plan going forward?
Yeah, great point there. I think it just probably comes down to the fact that Donovan got glowing reviews from his young players like Buzelis, who had a big year. I'm sure he spoke highly in his exit interview with the front office about how much he helped him develop and provided him confidence throughout the course of the season. And then also probably got some great reviews from leaders on this team like Kobe White or Nick Vucevic. So obviously all the best to Coach Donovan and the Bulls. And like you said, World B, I think it was great that we at least saw him drastically change the pace of play offensively last year. He is trying new things with this group and might have more in store next season for all of us. So we'll have to keep that in mind. Now, Bruce, you had mentioned in your analysis of this signing and keeping the Bulls in mind that the East is far from settled. And one thing that hasn't been settled in the East thus far and remains a possibility is Ben Simmons staying in the Eastern Conference. And the sweepstakes are certainly heating up here. And it appears both your Celtics and World B's Knicks are very much interested in Mr. Simmons' services. So I'll let you two battle this one out. Who wants him to join your team more? Is it Bruce? Is it World B? I'd suspect it's probably you, Bruce, just given the fact that you could use some help at the center spot. Am I right?
Yeah, I mean, look, Ben Simmons cannot shoot. This we know, okay? But he is an elite playmaker. He's a rebounder. He's a defender. And on most teams, like the Knicks, he would likely come off the bench because of his shooting woes. But his other skills, as we know, are well established, and he's still just 29 years old. I think Boston would be a great landing spot for him. And I'm here for it, man. I mean, this is going to be an experimental gap year in Boston with Tatum gone and other members of the 24 team gone. So you've got Anthony Simons, Jaylen Brown, Derek White, Peyton Pritchard in the mix. So a guy like Ben, he can be a ball mover on the perimeter because they like to swing it around and shoot those threes, or He can be a driver and a kicker, and he's a terror on the boards, and is a solid team defender. So look, Ben can help keep them in the 43 to 47 win range, and that puts you in the playoffs, probably even above the play-in. And if somehow or another Tatum returns for the playoffs, unlikely, I know, but not impossible, who knows what might happen? I mean, I'm happy if Boston takes a flyer on this guy, provided, the price is right.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think Ben Simmons going to Boston would be best for both parties, really. It provides Ben Simmons an awesome opportunity to really show what he can do as a starter again, and in a system where there's plenty of other guys that can shoot the basketball. World B, what's your thoughts on Ben Simmons? And I'd like to hear the other side and other perspective on this as a Knicks fan.
Oh, I agree 100% with Bruce. I think he'd be great on the Celtics. I think he'd be terrific on the Celtics. I think we should, push that agenda going forward. I mean, we say, well, he can't shoot. Well, we really don't know what he can do with his shot because he doesn't even try at this point. All but over the last 3 seasons, less than 5% of his shots, which is over 500, have been outside the paint. So you really don't have a good barometer of what he can do other than he doesn't want to shoot. He would be a role player. How much of a role player on the Knicks, it's hard to tell. They're going to use a roster more than they did with Tibbs. I think that was a given. Otherwise, I think Tibbs would still be there. It's just a matter of, and you know what? There's a lot of injuries on that team. We've seen it over years, so you're going to need depth, and he would provide depth. Bruce mentioned he does a lot of other things really well, but he's not on the court a lot. And he sees about 20 minutes a game. Is that enough to really get into a bidding war with anybody over? My personal feeling is no. I don't. If he was such a difference maker, I think he would still be in Clipper land.
Yeah. I just can't see him surviving a full season as a Knick in Madison Square Garden. I feel like they'd run that guy way out of town, like immediately almost. I mean, if you thought Philly was bad, just imagine New York.
He's been in Brooklyn. I mean, in anonymity, albeit, but he does have a perspective of. He can read the papers. He can, he doesn't have to hear it in the crowd. He can read the papers and see what life is like being, connected with the Knicks. So it's not a foreign element to him. I think he's gotten past a lot of that garbage that happened with him in Philly, but I don't see where the Knicks benefit from having him on the roster for 15, 20 minutes a night.
Yeah. I just hope he didn't peak at the age of 21 when he was dating Kendall Jenner.
Nice. All right, let's go ahead and review some more off-season teams and hand out some grades. So let's go ahead and start out in the Eastern Conference. First up, we got the Boston Celtics. Bruce, I'll let you hand out your grade first, and we'll all go around and see what we've got on our report cards.
Okay. Out, Jason Tatum with an injury. Out, Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis, Luke Kornet, probably Al Horford, much to my dismay. In, Anthony Simons, Georges Niang, Luka Garza, Josh Minott, and maybe Ben Simmons. Grade, I'm giving Brad a B-, okay? Ooh. Unloading the salaries was a priority. It's going to be the experimental season, as we mentioned a moment or two ago. Low expectations. Minott might get a chance for some minutes, though, with this team that he never really received in his first 3 years with the Wolves. He's a 6'8" wing. He's just 22 years old. This will be his 4th NBA season. So it's going to be a chance for a guy like him to maybe, move up in the pecking order of the league. But it's a B- in my mind for Brad.
All right. Will B?
I gave them a C just because they really let a lot of talent go out the door. As Bruce mentioned, we'll assume Al Horford is out the door. Porzingis is gone. Holiday is gone. Luke Kornet, who really stood out in the playoffs, is gone. And they just didn't bring as much talent back. I don't know. I know what their plan is. We can all see that. That doesn't mean you get a better grade for what you let go right now. So for me, it's a C. It's not a disaster. They're obviously making a decision. It's not because they didn't want these guys back. They're planning for the future. But right now, this offseason, I give them a C.
Yep. I have a C as well, World B. And the reason I give them a C and not like a D or an F, given the guys they've let walk out the doors, because this is an experimental year, as Bruce alluded to earlier. And Anthony Simons has always been a guy that I like. The one thing that he does extremely well is shoot the three ball in spurts. And they've got guys on that team to help him stop shooting the three ball in the spurts that he's not making them. You know, they've got leaders like Derek White on the team, Sam Hauser, other options. I don't know if Portland could ever say they had different options to shoot the three ball in the time that he spent there, other than when he was coming off the bench, sparingly playing with Damian Lillard, of course, in his prime. But I like Simons getting an opportunity under Joe Mazzulla in this style offense. And Josh Minott, as Bruce pointed out too, he's a guy that always caught my eye in Vegas Summer League and in preseason and sometimes garbage time in the little minutes that we saw with him with the Timberwolves. So if he's provided a chance this year, it should be interesting to see, what he can bring to the table. So really looking forward to seeing what Joe Mazzulla can do with this group this year, but overall, average at best, C. Now, next up, World B, we've got your New York Knicks. What grade are you handing out for them?
I gave him a C as well for this offseason. I mean, I know you guys probably expected me to put him in the upper level there of Dean's List or something like that, but no, they did add some depth where we thought they were lacking. There was Yabusele and Jordan Clarkson, who will, my thoughts aside on Jordan Clarkson, he'll get minutes, that's for sure, as part of their roster build up. But I just go back to the embarrassment that they went through this summer in getting Mike Brown, who we all like and think he'll do a good job with the Knicks. But he really was option not even C. It was more like E or F if you want to look at it. They went through 4 coaches who were already signed to try and get to permission to talk to, and they all were denied. So we talked about it. It just was an embarrassing summer in trying to get a coach after you let your most successful coach in the last quarter century go. So you don't get high marks for the way that whole thing was handled. And that's why they get a C in my book.
All right, Bruce.
Well, as Worldby mentioned, they brought in Gershon Yabusele, Jordan Clarkson, and Mike Brown to be the head coach. The guys that are out, I'm guessing, are most likely going to be Cameron Payne and Landry Shamet. But I'm giving them a higher grade than Worldby. I'm giving them a B+ because I really feel that added depth to pretty much a stand-pat roster. I mean, their main guys, they're solid. They didn't need to, start, making, panic moves, and they didn't. So they add a couple of veterans and a coach that's going to use those guys, which I think will help the team's energy level in the playoffs. So I would say B+ for the Knicks.
Yeah, I got him at a B, Bruce, and the reason for that is the fact there's really no real departures with this team. They got 2 big bench additions in Clarkson and Yabusele that are now on board. I think we could all agree Mike Brown's probably going to go deeper into the bench, utilize more guys throughout the course of the season. More guys are going to get opportunity, more energy out there on the floor, keeping guys a little bit fresher for the playoffs. And this is going to be the first year that this group really has a full offseason together, too. I know a lot of times we fail to remember just how crazy the start of last season was for both the Knicks and the Timberwolves making that big trade. So keep that in mind as well. And, of course, we all like Mike Brown. I think he did a hell of a job with the Sacramento Kings, and he's definitely up for the pressure and the expectations that come with taking the Knicks job. So it was an embarrassing offseason with the coaching search, but somehow they were able to land on their feet and got lucky to land a guy like Mike Brown. Now, World B, you're back up again. The Orlando Magic. I think they're making the Dean's List with you this year, but I'll let you.
Yeah, for me, it's an A. Yeah, they get an A for me. It's and you be as objective as you can. It wasn't just the fact that they traded for Desmond Bane. They secured Paolo Banchero for years with a rookie max extension there. They got Mo Wagner back on a 1 year. They were worried about that, and so and they got Tyus Jones to solve their issues at point guard. All good things here. They're taking a big gamble now. There's a lot of money that's thrown out their way. Their payroll is definitely going to go up over the next few years. So expectations are going to be higher, and they should be when you make moves like this and you position yourself to be a serious contender in the East. But, expectations aside, the moves they made, I think, are beneficial not just for this coming season, but down the road. So for me, it's an A.
All right, Bruce?
Well, they got rid of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was a disaster for them last season. And they traded, Cole Anthony is also gone. Nice bench guy. And as you mentioned, they bring in Desmond Bane, who's going to be, dynamic three-point shooter for that team, which has been a something they've needed. And as you mentioned, Tyus Jones, a solid point guard, takes care of the ball. He's going to make sure that Desmond gets some nice looks, and he's going to work with those bigs as well. So I give them an A-. I mean, Bane gives them the shooting, some playmaking, some defense. Jones, as we said, takes care of the ball. The young dudes are all signed. Paolo, Suggs, and Franz Wagner, they're all solid. I would be absolutely shocked if Orlando finished lower than fourth in the East. They're going to be really good. They're going to have home court in the first round. So A- for their front office.
All right. I've got to go with an A. I think going all in, taking out all the doubt. These are the guys we believe in. You guys are the chosen ones to move this team and carry it forward. I think it's going to make a world of difference. And they bring in a veteran leader like Desmond Bane that's got a lot of good experience with the Memphis Grizzlies. And they improved on two fronts. Their shooting, and they needed another guard that could really handle the ball in spurts. And Desmond Bane can do that. And then also adding Tyus Jones only helps that as well. So big expectations. I'm with you, Bruce. This should be a top 4 team in the Eastern Conference next year. A lot at stake given how much money they threw around, like World B said. But I think it was all worth it. And now's a great time to go for it with just how unsettled the Eastern Conference is. This is a team that could certainly take advantage of some other teams being down a couple guys. So best of luck to the Magic next year. Now, shifting gears to the off-season grades in the Western Conference. Let's start right at the very top here, Bruce, with the reigning champion, Oklahoma City Thunder.
Out. Nobody. They've got everybody back. Okay. Young team, championship, 68-win team. Big extensions for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jalen Williams, and Chet Holmgren. In rookie Nikola Topic, who missed all of his first season with an injury, and he did well in the summer league. So he may not be a major contributor, but certainly a guy that gives them depth. They get an A. I mean, at least until the salary woes kick in after next season. But they should be like a heavy favorite to repeat as champions next year. A.
Yeah, no doubt. World B?
Yeah, I mean, they get an A in my book. They, as Bruce mentioned, you win the NBA title and you lose nobody. And not only do you not lose anybody, you secure your best players down the road. Again, just like with the Magic, it's a fairly big gamble because of the money involved. If it doesn't work out for some reason, you're tied into that. On the other hand, why shouldn't it work out? You just won the NBA title with a young group that you assume will just get better. So, injuries aside, this team should be the heavy favorites, not just next season, but maybe years down the road. So it's hard to say anything other than an A for this group.
Yeah, it's an A for me. I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And they're doing a great job making sure that this thing stays a well-oiled machine. And when it does break, they've got options to go ahead and try to fix that other ways. So there's no reason they shouldn't be an A at this point. And I would love to hear any other grade other than that from any NBA fans out there. Well, next up, we got the Houston Rockets, Bruce. This is an interesting team because to me, if there was ever a team to really be gunning for that top spot in the West to knock off OKC, it's Houston and what they've done this offseason.
Oh, yeah. I mean, look, out Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks. In Kevin Durant, Dorian Finney-Smith, Clint Capella. All right. The grade is A. KD remains an elite scorer, especially in the clutch. DFS replaces much of what they lost in Brooks, and the young core of Şengün and Thompson and Eason and Smith continues to grow. Van Vliet and Steven Adams, solid veterans on the team. They have everything. I mean, I'm not saying that they're going to close that 18-game gap and overtake OKC as number one in the West, but to me, they are a clear number two.
Yeah. Will be?
I put him at an A-, just because the trade for KD was a bold move, no question about it. Getting him could pay off in a trip to the finals. Let's be honest. In a 7-game series, you never know what's going to happen. And in a 7-game series with OKC, the other team has Kevin Durant, so that's a big benefit for the Rockets. The only thing I question about it, I mean, we mentioned they gave up on Jalen Green at a young age, which was a little bit of a surprise. We know why. Re-signing Fred VanVleet, they saw enough out of him to want to bring him back. Sounds good. Dylan Brooks being gone is tough. Let's not forget Dorian Finney-Smith is on board there because the Lakers wouldn't give him extra years, so he's there. That's another veteran presence. The only reason I don't get a solid A or whatever, I know Kevin Durant, when he's healthy, is a great player. He's one of the top 10 in the league, perhaps, even at this age. But he is at this age, 37, and how much are you going to get out of him at this age? He's got a lot of wear and tear on those tires. So if he can survive the season and make it into the playoffs, absolutely fantastic for the Rockets. And like I said, in a 7-game series, one team's going to have Kevin Durant and the other team is not. That's a big plus for the Rockets if he's healthy. It's a bold move. It's a big gamble, and I'll just leave it at A- for now. It obviously could improve to an A+ if they can challenge the Thunder for tops in the West.
Yep. I've got them at an A+ because I think they have really improved their depth at every position. I mean, starting just at the center position, they re-signed Steven Adams as well. So they've got Steven Adams, Şengün, and Clint Capella. All three do something a little bit differently, different aspects there. They re-signed Jabari Smith to a contract extension, showing the confidence in him and believing in him. I think he's a guy that's going to be able to help keep KD off his feet during the regular season at times. And when they play the teams like the Thunder, where you got to go against a guy like Chet, you might see a KD, Jabari Smith lineup as the 4-5 out there in spurts as well. So between those two guys and what you guys have already added to, I've got this team as an A+.
By the way, I forgot to mention, I'm glad you brought it up, Jabari Smith Jr. signing that big deal, because it raised some eyebrows. Why would they sign him to such a long-term deal? And so because he's been hurt, he hasn't put up astronomical offensive numbers. But when they were at their best defensively, which is what we know Coach Udoka likes to have, is when Jabari Smith was healthy. When he was on the court, they were at their best when he was on the court. Defensively, they were at their best. So I think they saw what a difference maker he can be for their defense, which I'm sure is what they feel like they're going to carry them to the next level for them, whichever that may be, the conference finals, the NBA finals, whatever it may be. So that was a good point, bro. I forgot to mention Jabari Smith. He's one of my favorite players to watch or whatever, just because of the difference maker he can be defensively.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, last but certainly not least, the last team we're going to discuss here tonight, Bruce, the Los Angeles Lakers.
Out, Dorian Finney-Smith, going to Houston. In, DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, and Jake LaRavia. I give them a B. LeBron and Luka are still the studs. Austin Reeves continues to grow. Smart helps their perimeter defense, and Ayton has a chance to resurrect his career. The West, though, is brutally tough. But LA has definitely inched forward from what they had last season, so I'm going to give them a B.
All right. World B?
I gave them a C+. They made an effort here. They are still gearing up for the summer of 27. I think that's still really clear in the deals they made. As Bruce mentioned, Ayton, Marcus Smart. It's better, but it doesn't exactly move the needle for me in terms of them being legitimate contenders. What is a positive is we hear really good reports about Luka's training in the offseason, And so that's a real positive sign. They were able to get LeBron to return for another season, whereas his mindset at this point, that's up in the air, but he is coming back to the Lakers for now, so that's a positive thing. The moves that they made, while the names were good, and maybe they'll make a difference, who knows, they just don't move the needle for me. So they don't get a bad grade, but they don't get in the B's and A's for me. It's a C+.
All right. I'm going to go B+ on this one because, let's face it, the Lakers, their hands are pretty tied at the moment. And if you would have told me at the start of the offseason that they would add DeAndre Ayton, Marcus Smart, and Jake LaRavia into the mix, I would have thought you were crazy, given just kind of the salary constraints there. I don't know how far it's going to go. I'm really leaning on Marcus Smart being able to have some veteran presence with some of the younger guys on the team, even maybe teaching Austin Reeves a thing or two, and DeAndre Ayton be able to stay focused and kind of be dominating, as he said in his opening press conference with the Portland Trailblazers a few years ago. It's a lot of big ifs, but
really with capital I there.
Yeah.
There's some big gambles there. That's all right.
It is, but they've made my interest in watching them next season, outside of the fact of a healthy, in shape Luka, that much more interesting with Ayton and Marcus Smart on board there. All right. Last but certainly not least, let's go ahead and roll out a new segment for this offseason and get to our show that we'd like to call My Favorite Season. It is quite simply that in itself. It's what specific year and team was your favorite NBA season? Bruce, I'll let you lead us off.
Well, the 2007-2008 Celtics. They went from 24 and 58 to 66 and 16 and banner 17. Shortly after the 07 draft, they traded Wally Szczerbiak and newly drafted Jeff Green, who's still around, by the way, to Seattle, which isn't still around, for Ray Allen and Big Baby Davis. And then a month later, Danny Ainge acquired Kevin Garnett from the Wolves for Al Jefferson, Ryan Gomes, Gerald Green, Theo Ratliff, Sebastian Telfair, and 2 first-rounders. They started the season 29-3. They cruised through with the best record overall by 7 games. The playoffs were a bit of an adventure. They needed 7 games to get by the Hawks in the first round, and then in 7 to get by the Cavs in round 2. And for those old enough to remember, that game 7 was Paul Pierce and LeBron James both going for more than 40 points. Celtics won it by 7. Then in the Eastern Finals, Celtics knocked off the Pistons. And in the finals, well, we know what happened. It was the Celtics in 6 over the Lakers. Game 6 in Boston, an absolute blowout. It was over at halftime. The Garden spent the whole second half celebrating. And in the final seconds, Pierce gave Doc Rivers the first ever indoor Gatorade bath, which happened just a few feet away from where I was standing because of my post-game assignment for ESPN, which was basically to wait for Mike Tirico to finish up doing the game on ESPN radio. Then we were going out on the court with a camera to get what we call live-to-tape interviews with Rajon Rondo and Kendrick Perkins. It was a total dream season from beginning to end. I'll never forget the 07-08 season.
Oh, it sounds like one that's going to be tough to top for sure. World B?
Well, I should preface this by saying I'm old enough to be around when the Knicks won the championship in 69 and 73, but not old enough to really remember it. So my Knicks memories probably go from after 1980 or so. And there was a few years that were tough to choose from. In 1984, the Knicks made it to the conference semifinals with Bernard King going on an unbelievable run, beating the Pistons in an epic series, pushing Bruce's Celtics to 7 games when nobody really thought they could. But for me, it came down to the 1999 version of the Knicks, that the lockout season that made it to the finals in a surprising run that was one thrill after another. But for me, it'll always be, for now, it's always going to be 1994, the Pat Riley era of the Knicks. It was the 3rd season. They had gotten to the conference semifinals the first year, lost to the Bulls, his first year. The next year, they had the Bulls. They had a better record than the Bulls, lost to them in the conference finals. So we figured they would make it to the NBA Finals in year 3. And Michael Jordan retiring, that added to the expectations of making the finals. But And they did. They went all the way to the finals, lost in the Game 7 to Houston. They blew a 3-2 series lead. John Starks had an epic game on the other end, on the other spectrum of epic. But I'll always remember that they played the Pacers in the conference finals. They were down 3-2 in the series. That's when we had Reggie Miller and Spike Lee having their battle. And I saw two of my favorite games as a basketball fan ever. Game 6 on a Friday night in Indianapolis when the Pacers were supposed to knock them off and go to the finals. The Knicks came up with one of the best wins of my career as a fan, my lifetime as a fan. They won on the road and beat the Pacers. Then they go to Game 7 at the Garden, and Patrick Ewing has arguably the greatest Game 7 performance you could ask for in a conference final. 24 points, 22 rebounds, 7 assists, 5 blocks, played most of the second half in foul trouble and never fouled out. They pulled away at the end. It was really a memorable season. It just didn't end up, never mind the whole OJ debacle that went on during the finals. It ended up one game short. They played as hard as they could, and that was as close as they've come to a final, to a championship since '73. It was my favorite Knicks season to date.
Another great choice there, World B. As for mine, being from Phoenix, many of you might think I might do the 7 seconds or less Suns. Now, don't get me wrong, that was a lot of fun. But what I really enjoyed in my most favorite NBA season ever was the Milwaukee Bucks in 2009-2010. Now, this was my second year being a season ticket holder for the Bucks. So my freshman year at Marquette University, it was a flatline team, no hope, no real excitement. Michael Redd just kept getting older and older, bless his heart, but no chance. That summer, we drafted Brandon Jennings, and he got off to a hell of a start in Milwaukee. He brought some life to the franchise, the city, brought a swagger that I hadn't seen since I at least moved to Milwaukee to start my collegiate career. And I've got to tell you something. Seeing Brandon Jennings score 55 points in only his 7th NBA game, never will forget that moment. Probably the most impressive game I've ever been to, despite if you go back and watch that game, the defense by Don Nelson's Warriors, very suspect at time. But still cool to say I saw Brandon Jennings score 55 points on Steph Curry. Not many people could say that. And boy, did their careers really take a turn. The tables kind of turned on the career trajectory from there. But really was just an exciting year. The Bucks ended up making the playoffs, which was not something anyone projected at the start of the season. And they really gave a good test to the Atlanta Hawks that season. And, I think I went 6 or 7 games, and just seeing the Bradley Center where the Bucks used to play actually packed during the playoffs for the one time all year was cool to see. Usually there are plenty of open seats, but not in the playoffs. And there was an energy that I definitely will not forget. And I'm sure a bunch of those Bucks OG fans can at least agree that is up there as one of their favorite seasons as well. Now, lastly here, let's get to our word association here and have some fun quickly as we are into overtime here. I've got a list of 6 players, and give me the word that you would associate with said player. And World B, I'm going to start with you on this one. Lonzo Ball.
Injuries. That's the word that comes to mind. We've never gotten to see the full potential of Lonzo Ball because he's just been so injured. 65 games, never played more than 65 games, or has yet to play 65 games in any season. He's just, missed 2 seasons in a row recently. So for me, it's just injuries when it comes to him.
All right. Bruce, a friend of the show, Luke Kornet.
The word is deserving. He got his bag from the San Antonio Spurs. Deserved it. Has always been a good soldier, great teammate, great guy. Good for him. We'll miss him in Boston.
All right. World B, Desmond Bane.
Perimeter. He's brought in to be that missing element from the perimeter. He's 41% three-point shooter for his career on a team that has been the worst three-point shooting team last season for years now. It's been their biggest Achilles there. So that's the word that comes to mind right now is perimeter because they need it, and that's what he's bringing.
All right. Bruce, Damian Lillard.
Homeboy. He's back home in Portland, where he belongs, where he wants to be, where they love him, where they want him. That's it.
All right. Will be Cooper Flagg.
Future. He is the future, one of the future faces of this league for the next 10, 15 years, if everything goes well. He's excelled at every stop he's been at. When he went from Maine and went to Montverde High School down in Florida, he excelled there. When he went to Duke University his freshman year, he excelled there. When he was on the select team that trained with the Team USA national team in Vegas for the Summer Olympics, he excelled there. So he's been solid at every stop. I don't expect that to go away anytime soon. So he's not the only future for this association, but he's definitely one of them.
All right. Bruce, last one. Marcus Smart.
Gritty. He's the teammate you most want next to you if you're ever in a foxhole. He's got every teammate's back. He's going to be a great influence in the locker room for the Lakers because they're kind of a soft team, but they just brought in like the master of grittiness in Marcus Smart.
They certainly did. And job well done, fellas. And with that, that will do it for this edition of the 48 Minutes podcast on Believe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll be back with you next week to be sure you're up to date in 48 on all things around the association. Take care, everyone.